Welcome to Leading Ladies of Rio Rancho, brought to you by the Rio Rancho Observer. During this series, we will invite business and community leaders from Rio Rancho and its surrounding communities in Sandoval County for conversations on what they do, why they do it, and the issues they face. I'm your host, Tracy Goldeisen, editor of the Rio Rancho Observer. Welcome. Hello, everybody. Today we are joined by Angela Gutierrez, Executive Director of Main Street Corrales. And I know this is called technically Leading Ladies of Rio Rancho, but we do a lot of work in Corrales and Bernalillo and Placitas and those communities in Sandoval County. So, Angela, welcome. Thank you for coming in. Do you just want to take a moment and introduce yourself and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. Thanks for having us and giving us a chance to kind of talk a little bit about the Main Street program and Corrales. And yes, our partnership with Rio Rancho in general and with the Observer. And, we just, we're happy to be neighbors and be involved. So thanks for having us here.
Okay, so for those who aren't familiar with the Main Street program, what does it do both locally in Corrales and as a national organization?
Yeah, so Main Street is a national trust. It's a national organization. And then each state, I think, probably organizes it differently in terms of the structure. But in New Mexico, the Main Street programs sit under the Economic Development Department of New Mexico. So, looking up New Mexico Main Street, if someone's interested, is a really good place to start. Because all the programs throughout the state are visible. And then it gives, a little bit of a structural understanding of sort of why we exist. And the National Trust it's rooted in historic preservation, which obviously, is very logical throughout New Mexico and lots of other places in the U.S. And so that's kind of like the first way to start explaining it. And then each community is very different, in the assets and the needs and that kind of thing. So.
And how many Main Street communities are there in New Mexico? Do you know?
Yeah, I want to say 32.
Oh, wow. That many.
Yeah, I know it's a surprising thing, but like I said, each community really has different kind of natural assets, and it's usually based on the history of the community. But again, that historic preservation is kind of at the heart of the work. Okay.
And can you speak specifically to what Main Street Corrales does?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's 1999 when we actually received the accreditation to become an accredited local program. And that process is fairly extensive, right? It's an application, a lot of benchmarks. And so we are a 501c3. And so we service contract with the municipality, so with the village of Corrales. And that structure also allows a lot of projects to get done. We end up running a lot of the events. We do a lot of promotional, cover a lot of promotional aspects for the village. We do not have our own chamber. And so we're very thankful for the Rio Rancho regional chamber because we're able to really partner and then, take that support too. And the reason I mention that is because I think in Main Street Corrales, we end up doing a lot of that type of work that maybe a chamber would fulfill if we had one. So, although we're not a chamber, but we tag team quite a bit with the village and really try to cover all those bases. Corrales is about 8,500 people, so residents.
Yeah. And then how did you get to be involved with the organization?
Well, that's it's an interesting pipeline, but I think probably a common one, in some of the other organizations. For me, my history was kind of through PTA, right, which is also another, heavily volunteer-supported organization. And the structure of most Main Street programs is, an executive director, possibly a staff or two other members, and then a working board, and that's similar to a PTA. No staff, but, a very involved working board. So, volunteerism is really at the heart of a lot of the work that gets done as well. So I was kind of recruited as my time at PTA was ending. It's like, hey, Angela, do you want to, be on the Main Street board? And I really had never heard of it. But it was really interesting because it's community-based work. And so that was a good friend of mine who kind of recruited me to join the board. And after a year and a half, I felt like it was a really good, lead in just from learning. And our executive director, Sandy, was retiring. And so it's kind of a natural transition from the board to the executive director.
Okay. And then, you alluded to it before that we do a lot of work together, the Observer and Main Street Corrales. And it seems like every time we come to the table for another project that there's more going on, more events. And then additionally, now you have a new staff member. So is it something that is continually growing or expanding or?
Yeah, and that's an interesting question. I think, when I really think about Main Streets and the capacity that these programs have, I think we could actually add another staff member, and really take what could be done, to a new place. However, that's always, there's a lot that goes into that formula and budgets and et cetera. But the reason I say that is because, the structure under the Economic Development Department, the possibility of capital outlay projects, legislative involvement, things like that, the level of projects that, depending on, is there available land? Is there desire for it? What does the community need? All these pieces in any given community, not just Corrales, really could, expand, I think, the capacity of the Main Street. And that's a careful decision-making process, too. You don't want to bite off more than you can chew at any given moment. But, I think since we've been involved together, it's some of it's repetitive. We really are a traditional village, and I think a lot of people look forward to the mainstay events, right? We've got a couple different parades. Yeah. We've always had garden tour. We always have Starry Night, So as we've had repeating events, we've also added a couple, and one that's a good example is Viva Corrales.
Right.
And that's coming up, at the end of April, and that is a function of the Arts and Cultural District authorization that we're after, and almost about to complete. So that's a good example of like the growth that you're referring to, right? It's interesting to think we have room for something new, but we did.
Right.
But and I think, that's another example of a really big authorization and project that we've been working on for years, and will bring a lot of benefits once we have that designation. So,
And what, to your view, makes Corrales stand out from the rest of the metro area?
Gosh, that's an interesting question. I think I'll back up and think about all the communities, as I've sort of said. Each place in New Mexico really has kind of its own experience, right? And that was a comment made. I attended the Outdoor Rec conference, and one of the distinguishing factors in outdoor rec tourism for New Mexico was that there's a cultural experience that accompanies the outdoor rec. And I think that's what you find in Corrales and other places that you go. There's a specific, kind of almost like a subtle cultural experience that you're having, and may not exactly understand all the pieces, if it's your first time there, but it feels rural, right? It does. It's spacious, and I think that's the agricultural and farmland, history of Corrales that you kind of feel when you come in. Some of that open space and, farming, you can still see properties, that farm and have that open feeling. And so, there's a lot of just history like that, that someone who's never been to Corrales says, wow, I really have never been down there. And then you've got lots of, different businesses and kind of unique shops and things that you aren't going to find anywhere else. Yeah. And then, Corrales is also known as the equestrian capital of New Mexico. So, it's not uncommon to see people riding their horses, even on Corrales Road, And,
I know it. I mean, that was one of the first things when we moved here a few years ago was we were driving down the road and my son was like, there's a horse crossing sign.
Yes. And it's like, we take it seriously too, and I think, there are a couple businesses that have a hitching post because people
wow.
will ride and, get a cup of coffee and hang out. Or, I think a lot of those traditions are, really appreciated and well preserved there. And so there's a really unique mix of things in Corrales and great food too, you know?
I mean, it's just really interesting because I've noticed when I've gone back and forth from Rio Rancho to Corrales, like there's not a break in development necessarily, but you can definitely feel when you cross from one into the other.
Well, and a lot of it is the bosque also, just the geographical location of Corrales. You see a lot of cottonwoods. You kind of get that feeling, even if you're just drive through it, like that you took a break almost, like a mental break. And that's, I think, part of what kind of feels different and cool about
part of the charm.
Yeah, visiting. And I believe, the Corrales Road's a scenic byway designated too. So
a lot of history.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And so, we partner 4 times a year to put out the Corrales Main Street News. And we just wrapped up the spring edition for this year. It's coming out in a matter of days from when we're recording this.
Yeah.
So can you go into what the function of that publication is and what people can look for in it? And
Sure, absolutely. And we really appreciate that partnership too, because the Main Street News existed before, my term, had kind of taken a pause. It's a lot of work, as you well know. And so, and a lot of effort. And I think it was something people really appreciated. And so that was, some of the immediate feedback that I got, as I was getting started would be really nice to have that publication back. Right. And so when my editor, Wendy at Hoffman, and I picked this up, I think our focus was to highlight the treasures of the village, right? And so we're not like hard news at all.
A lot of features.
I think business focused, organization focused. We're really trying to just expose and highlight what is in Corrales for people who've lived there for many years or people who are new. I think there's always something to learn. And so that's kind of our goal, is to obviously talk about some of the work that Main Street does. But a lot of the work that we do is that partnership, with our entire community, and we try really hard to work with any organization or group that, we can actively support. And so, that publication is really, it's trying to bring people around the tables and just let them know what we've got there. So,
yeah, it's always an interesting read. And we hope we do our part.
Oh, absolutely. It's
getting the word out about Corrales.
Yeah. And I think we feel very lucky, to have that vehicle, honestly, to be able to, again, like talk about the work that we do, feature a lot of the neat things in the village, and then obviously have such a good working relationship, with the Observer is just like it's a great opportunity for us, and we really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. We enjoy doing it too. And then, you alluded to, there's some events coming up. Do you want to highlight what some of those things are people can look forward to in Corrales?
Yeah, thanks. Absolutely. So as I mentioned earlier, the Arts and Cultural District authorization is, it's a long process, but one of the benchmarks that, we were required to do was to develop a signature event. And so we did that last year, and it's called Viva Corrales. This year it's going to kick off April 28th and then run for the next 4 following weekends.
Oh, wow.
And so we really structured it. We wanted to try structuring it that way this year because we have so many things that go on in Corrales. And so that schedule will be featured in the Main Street News, and then it's on our website. But on April 28th, that kickoff day, we're going to have a health and wellness event that features a lot of the service providers and wellness people in the village, and then also a pedestrian safety and equestrian portion. The growers market kicks off their summer season that day, which obviously the Corrales Growers Market is a really popular, big, draw for folks to be able to come from, our neighboring communities. And so that summer season will kick off. Sandoval County Master Gardeners are going to have a big plant sale because it's kind of that season too, on the 28th. And then following that, we've got our CAST, which is the acronym for the Corrales Art and Studio Tour. So that's the following weekend, and that's really big and well attended. I think 90 artists, maybe 30 sites. They'll have a host site with different folks in it, and those booklets are available, so you can get a preview of that. And then the following weekend is going to be a focus on like a farm tour, agriculture, possibly at the farm stand. And so that one's still kind of in the planning stage, but the last weekend has a bunch of stuff too. We've got Heritage Days at Corrales Historical Society in Casa San Ysidro. Classic car show at the church in Corrales, and Fiestas, which is a big event for them. And then the Corrales Tractor Club is having their annual tractor show that day too. So that's the 18th, 19th. So that's just an example of how many groups and how many things. And,
right. But a lot of moving pieces.
Yeah, but they're all really neat, unique, and they're all family friendly. Yeah. Just it's kind of a neat way to spend a day if you have time, or even part of a day. Yeah. Come see something a little bit different, and maybe learn some stuff.
Yeah, go out and get that rural vibe and step back into some history too, it sounds like.
Definitely. And I think, we have a lot of great places to get food and drinks, and just really kind of make a little day of it.
Sounds neat. Yes. And then you also mentioned some of the other events, Starry Night and the garden tour.
Yeah, so those will, garden tours first Sunday in June.
Okay.
And that one this year is going to be a little bit different in terms of there's going to be residents. We always have a list of homes that are, graciously willing to open up and let, everybody see the unique garden. But then we're going to have like an educational sort of focus and really try to talk about sustainability.
Right.
The Sandoval County Master Gardeners, that's their mission now, is really talking about sustainable gardening. So we're trying to add that component to the garden tour this year. And then in August, we have our major fundraiser, which is Starry Night. Okay. And that's, for the past few years, been at Trees of Corrales, which we're very fortunate to be able to host there. It's a really beautiful spot and an awesome business that's in Corrales. So, that's a kind of a unique thing too, because it's outdoor.
Yeah. So you mentioned fundraising. Is that a big component of what you need to do as executive director, is fundraise for the program? Or
yeah, definitely. I think a lot of the programs, it's grant writing, fundraising, and that's again from the 501c3 structure, right? Kind of one of the main strategies, right? But typically we're directing a lot of those projects and fundraising for specific reasons. And so, we're always happy to talk about that too. A lot of this has been arts and cultural district, beautification. For many years we've been working on like a pedestrian sort of an access route along Corrales Road, because it's an old historical road.
Right.
The walkability of it's tough. So that's another example of, a project that we'd love to get done and see happen. So,
okay. Well, is there anything else that you want to touch on that we haven't gotten to yet?
Well, I think, my main, message is always like, we're accessible. If anybody ever has questions or needs anything in Corrales, we love to try to help if we can, or send people to the right place. And I think that's always kind of that connectivity is our hope, where we're supporting everybody and just it's really bottom up economic development, right? So we're preserving and progressing and just trying to keep that charm. So
move things forward while preserving the past.
Yeah, 100%. And it's a tricky thing to do, but well worth it. So
okay. All right. Well, thank you so much again for coming in and talking to us. And if you haven't seen the spring 2024 Corrales Main Street News, make sure you look for it and, sounds like some of these events, get out and enjoy them. They sound like a lot of fun.
Yeah, please. We welcome everyone to come and check it out. And obviously we want to thank you guys again. And the Main Street News, I think, is special sections, right, on the Observer website.
Yeah.
So they're always available also. And our website is visitcorrales.com. So it's pretty easy to find.
All right. Well, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tracy. Thanks for everything.